What they don't tell you about lost episodes. Growing up, I always knew that I had the coolest dad in the world. He never breathed down my neck to have perfect grades, and he took me on tons of trips to different cities all the time. My room is full of souvenirs from all the places we visited. The coolest thing about him was that he was an animator for Cartoon Network. This meant that several of my favorite cartoons were some of the stuff he worked on. Whether I was watching reruns of old shows or watching the latest episodes of my new favorites, there was a good chance my dad was involved in their production. He even brought home copies of some storyboards he was working on. It was so cool being the kid in school who had sneak previews of upcoming shows. My friends always circled around me to read the storyboards with me whenever we hung out. It was almost like reading a comic book. My friends eventually asked me if my dad had any lost episodes in his collection. Lost episodes were something we gossiped about, often due to their incredibly elusive nature. They were highly obscure pieces of media that had corrupted versions of your favorite shows. I remember reading one blog post where some guy said he saw an episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy, where the trio died in a traffic accident after Eddie stole a car. Another person mentioned there being an episode of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, where Mac imagined the entire show. We were all a bit skeptical if those episodes were even real. But my friend George was the most invested into finding them. He was the daredevil of the group. George gladly volunteered to explore haunted houses in the neighborhood and climb over the school fence when the teachers weren't looking. One time he invited us over to his place to watch a rated R horror movie and convinced us that it was all based on a true story. I don't think that guy can go a single day without getting an adrenaline rush. Your dad totally has to know what a lost episode is. I bet everyone in the industry trades lost episodes with each other, and then they make those creepypasta to tease fans. George said to me at lunch one day, he has brought the subject up again and seemed intent on finding a lost episode. I don't know, man. You sure those aren't just urban legends? Nobody's even found one of those lost episodes for real. It's all just talk. I replied back. Sounds to me you're just too scared to go looking. You almost pissed yourself during movie night last time. Stop exaggerating. If you want to find an episode so badly, how about we search my dad's laptop? Let's see what he's hiding. George came over to my place the next day to search the computer. My dad wouldn't return home from the studio for at least an hour, so we had plenty of time to get it done. I typed in the password and scanned through all his files for anything that caught my eye. Nothing really stood out at first. It was just a bunch of character design sheets and storyboards from his cartoons. Some of it was stuff I've already seen before. After 20 minutes of searching, I was beginning to lose hope when a chat room popped up on the screen. Killjoy88. Hey man, you really outdid yourself with that episode you sent us. I wasn't expecting there to be that much blood. Both of our eyes flared up. This looked like it could be something good. I checked the chat history to see that my dad had sent a message with a video file attached. I eagerly gave it a click. A video popped up that showed the intro of The Loud House. I immediately got excited because that was a show I had tons of fun watching. After the intro, a title card that read, "What Happened to Lincoln," appeared. The episode began with Lincoln's family putting up missing posters for him around town. They all looked incredibly miserable, like they were moments away from sobbing their eyes out. The animation was also a bit sketchy and had a choppy frame rate. Characters often went off model to the point. They had uncanny valley expressions a lot of the time. The episode then did a flashback to a scene of Lincoln exploring a comic book shop that was painted a cobalt shade of blue. Lincoln narrated how this was a new shop town that was rumored to have rarest comics imaginable. This version of Lincoln was voiced by an adult man, maybe as placeholder until the episode was ready to air. Lincoln entered the shop and was shocked how grungy the place looked. Colorless brick walls surrounded him, and noticeable cobwebs grew from the corners. Lincoln approached the cashier to ask him if they had Ace Savvy Obscuritas, an issue of the Ace Savvy comic series that only has 13 known copies. Hearing this, an orange-haired kid walked up to Lincoln and said he was looking for the same issue. "Isn't that Jason?" George asked. "What?" "Jason Smithera, the kid who went missing about 3 months ago." I paused the video and studied the boy's face. George was right. The boy in the cartoon definitely resembled Jason. He was a kid from our school who suddenly went missing one day. The police searched hard to find him, but nobody had any clue where he could be. I still remember seeing his parents tearfully hang up missing posters around the neighborhood. He has frizzy orange hair, bright blue eyes, heavy freckles, and a birthmark in his forehead. The kid in the cartoon was the spitting image of him. That's one heck of a coincidence. I resumed the video. The cashier was a big burly man with scraggly black hair. He told the boys how fortunate they were, since he just so happened to have the last 2 copies. He led them down to the basement, where he kept a small collection of dust-covered comics. Lincoln and the boy gleefully grabbed the Ace Savvy issues and were about to read them, when 2 men ran up behind them and pressed white cloths to their noses. They struggled to break free, but eventually passed out. The voice acting sent chills down my spine. Not only did it sound completely believable, it also sounded like they hired an actual kid actor. It was then I realized how weird it was that a kid was brought in to record audio for a lost episode, especially when they didn't do the same for Lincoln. Eventually, a group of men all dressed in black entered the room with knives in their hands. The animation style was even more sketchy now, like the entire thing was roughly done in pencils. The men looked at Lincoln and the boy with eyes full of malicious intent. They pleaded with them with tears rushing down his face, but they only laughed at his pain. They each took turns dragging the knives across his skin before slowly digging it inside. Screams of pure agony blared from the speakers. It sounded way too real. It didn't sound like some kid recording in a booth. It was like the audio was directly recorded from a crime scene. What they did next is something I can hardly describe. They mangled that poor boy, turned him into something that hardly looked human anymore. Lincoln shared the same gruesome fate as him. By the time they were done, blood and bone were scattered all over the room. George and I screamed in disgust at the atrocity we just witnessed. I didn't even know what to believe. Did my dad actually animate a snuff film based on a real kid? He was supposed to be the coolest guy around, not some sick freak. Against my better judgment, I looked back at the chat room and was horrified even more. The guys bragged about how graphic the gore was and how cute the boys looked when they were being mangled. Apparently, my dad and other animators had a long history of sharing cartoons, where kids being brutally tortured was the main attraction. They would find a real child to draw on a character based on them and insert them into the cartoon of their choice. The worst part was when one of the guys asked my dad if he could make a lost episode based on me. "Only if you pay me double," his message said. Things haven't been the same ever since that day. I've been real distant from my dad and hardly ever hang out with him. Sometimes I worry that he realized I found out his secret. I feel like I should go to the police, but he technically hasn't done anything illegal. Drawn images of children aren't a crime, no matter how grotesque and depraved they are. I still wonder what happened to Jason. Was my dad just capitalizing on a tragedy, or was he somehow involved in it? To anyone reading this, please don't search for lost episodes of cartoons. Those episodes are a market for perverts who love to see children suffer. Update, I finally did it. I showed my mom what I found on Dad's computer. Naturally, she was utterly repulsed and got into a shouting match with him. Insults were thrown and so were fists. It wasn't long before they got a divorce, and I ended up under Mom's custody after Dad moved away. It hurt tearing their relationship apart like that, but I couldn't stand living under the same roof with that creep any longer. Things have settled down since then, but I noticed a black van patrolling around our neighborhood lately. It's been parked in front of the house, and outside my school sporadically throughout the month. I wonder if it's the same van from that video. Is Dad planning on making me the next subject of his snuff films? Right now, I can only hope and pray. If you enjoyed the story, consider subscribing, but don't blame me if you can't sleep tonight. Until next time, keep the lights on and the doors locked. Goodbye.